One of our guests you all know for the movies he's written and directed, which are full of supernatural plots. The films of M. Night Shyamalan have included The Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, Signs, The Village, The Happening, and most recently, After Earth. What is not so well known is that Knight and his wife, Bhavna, who is here with us this evening also, have a foundation dedicated to removing the barriers to achievement created by poverty and inequality. And they've become particularly interested in improving education systems, especially in inner city neighborhoods. Knight's new book, I Got Schooled, is really a report on what he learned over the past 4 or 5 years researching various school systems around the country, looking for what's working and what isn't. He's distilled his findings into, as the book's subtitle says, the 5 keys to closing America's education gap. He also debunks several prescriptions commonly put forward to fix our public schools, such as smaller classes, weaker unions, or merit pay for teachers. This is really quite a personal book, written very much in Knight's own voice, which is passionate, sincere, smart, and surprisingly optimistic. He's going to be in conversation here with another very passionate individual, one of our favorite local authors and star of MSNBC's Hardball, Chris Matthews. Chris was just in the store last month talking about his own new book, Tip and the Gipper, about how Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill managed to get things done despite sharp political differences. Chris's generous willingness to participate this evening gives me another chance to promote Tip and the Gipper as must-reading for anyone interested in a historical lesson about bipartisan cooperation. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Knight Shyamalan and Chris Matthews.
Well, this is fun. I'm a fan, and I don't see any dead people here today. Little joke. Actually, one of the memorable lines of your
13
films
seconds.
is "I see dead people," which is really fun. I like it. I want to start off with something from your writing because I think when people want to read this book, they want to read something that you wrote. It's a personal book, and it came out of you. It wasn't assigned to you. You picked the topic. You picked the passion, education. So this wonderful line is when you were in Olney High School, which is a really tough neighborhood in North Philly, where we grew up. It was Irish, now it's black, and very tough. North Broad, if you've ever been there, it's a tough, rundown neighborhood, the whole place. And you were talking to those kids, they're African-American kids, they're wondering why you're the highest paid writer in the world, which you pointed out to try to get their interest, which is the right way to do it, I think. And you said, I'm more me than they are them. Explain that about your success as a writer, that you're more yourself than most people are themselves, or at least you delve deeper into what that is, and how that took you to education as a passion.
The thing he's talking about is I did a Teach for America thing where I went in and taught an English, class and worked with these kids, and they were kind of like not really engaged. And when I came in, some of them were excited, and some of them were just not engaged, and it was just trying to be provocative. So I just said something provocative. I just said, I think word for word, I'm the highest paid writer in the world, and they all sat up. and so then I was like, okay, and all the teachers in the back stood up too. They were like, and I said, why is that? How do you think that happened? And then they were raising their hands, and they were like, luck, and I'm like, yes, that's possible, definitely, luck's involved for sure. And they're like, you know somebody? I'm like, actually, no, we're all Indians. We don't know anybody. Nobody in film. And so it went on, and they guessed. And then, do you work hard? I said, I do work hard, but certainly there are people that work harder than me. And I said, there are definitely people smarter than me. And, in my English class in high school, there was probably 2 or 3, that were. And I said, ultimately, I thought about it a lot, and I came down to the feeling that I was, ultimately more me than they were them. And so, I lived 3,000 miles away from Hollywood, and I'd write a screenplay about just me, feeling me, and it would be in a fictional circumstance, but it would be about my feeling about spirituality, my feeling about being a husband or father or this or that, all of it, the arrogance, the flaws, all of it put together, And I was telling the girl in the front, because she was really like staring at me, she was kind of ostracized from the group, that if you write about your experience, why you're leaning on your hand like that, what happened today before you got here, why the guy behind you is doing that, why you can't hear your principal's voice on the speaker because the speaker is not fixed, and so you just hear, rah, rah, rah. And what does that make you feel? I can't beat you. You were too, so an amazing light, and when you're yourself, you give it becomes like a light and it pierces through everything. And I think that kind of comes from, I guess, something that came from my parents or from, I don't know, from the culture that I was exposed to, that there's something worthy in me, right? And that's the thing you want the kids to have. And in fact, that's exactly the opposite message that they're getting. Ultimately, the book became a kind of a very, very evidence-based book. All of it's very evidence-based. I try to keep my opinion out of it entirely, but my opinion is that we're talking about a civil rights issue, and my opinion is that outside the school, they're getting a message, the opposite one, the one that I just said, about their worth and about what this country believes in them, because this is about closing the achievement gap with inner city, low-income, African-American, and Hispanic kids, and in closing that gap with their white suburban counterparts. And so telling them the opposite message in the school that they're in to overcome the message they're getting outside the house.
Well, separate but equal is illegal, unconstitutional now. And how do these kids in, say, ninth grade in, say, North Philly, how do they get the message that's wrong? When they walk into a classroom, because they have to go, the truant officers will get them if they don't, but they got to go to school. Their parents get them ready to go to school. I guess they help them get their clothes together, and hopefully they have breakfast. They go to school. What are the signals they get that say you're inferior, that you're not going to really get anything out of this? What's the thing that you're trying to fight as you get into trying to make education work? What's the bad education they're getting?
So I think you're saying the opposite of what I'm saying. What they're getting that message outside of school. So when they walk in that school, the teachers that are trying to close the gap, they are dealing with such a hard problem, right? And when at the beginning of the book, I write a disclaimer saying this is making the assumption that no one is going to fix anything outside the school, that no one's going to do anything about the poverty, about the racism, about anything. Can you close the gap just in the school? Put all of the burden on the teachers and the principals. So they're not getting that message. That's not what the research says from the schools. The schools, like, you have two kids. You have an inner city African-American kid in June in second grade and a white suburban kid in second grade. They can be at the same level at June when they graduate. When they come back in September, the white suburban kid has gained 1 month of learning from the experience he's had, the stimuli he's had, and the inner city African-American kid has lost 3 months of learning. So they're now 4 months apart in September. Then the teachers, again, have different burdens, right? So those teachers, it's not that they're getting a bad education. It's that the issues that those teachers are facing are very different than those white suburban teachers are facing, right? That kid is ahead of what the teacher's going to teach them. This kid's 3 months behind, has to go back and do the second grade stuff all over again while trying to get her third grade stuff. So you can see how it's a very different challenge. So what we're talking about is outside the school. I did not find in the research and through all those years of meeting that the problem was actually what you were insinuating there, that they were getting the wrong message in the school. It's what happens when they leave that school till the next morning when they come home.
Well, let's talk about two things you talk about. One is the bad teacher, the roadblock teacher. What is that?
What we're talking about there is, like, there's when you look at how powerful, the number one thing is the teacher, right? At the end of the day, when you look at the research, a great teacher, the one in the top 20th percentile, if you get 4 great teachers in a row, that teacher alone can close the gap. Those teachers alone. So if it was possible for everyone in the country to be taught by the top 20%, that's all you'd have to do. That's how powerful they are, right? Now, the very, very, very bottom group, the bottom 2-3%, which is what in the book I call them the roadblock teachers, they're causing so much pull, so much damage, so much loss that 3 or 4 decent teachers, good teachers in the middle can't overcome one child getting one of those teachers. So that's putting so much pull on the system.
How does that work? How does the one do so much damage in a row of 4?
Yeah, well, the row of 4 is gain. Let's just say in that thing, the 60th percentile teacher, one that's above the average, a good teacher, they're gaining a little bit, and they're gaining a little bit. And so 4 in a row, you're gaining. If by chance you got 4 in a row of the 60 percentile teachers, you're gaining. But the damage done by the 2/3 is like you're losing a grade. You're losing an entire grade with that one teacher. So that's what I'm referring to, the roadblock thing. I do want to clarify one thing though, because that when you look at all the data and you look at all the things that the book says, these are the things that you find that will close the gap. Everyone goes to this thing. Fire the teachers. That's not what the research says when I look at it impartially. That's not, if you said to me, you can only do one thing, that's not the thing I would do. If you said you can only do 2 things, that's not what the research says you should do. You should do 3 things, that's still not the thing you should do. So that is not, everybody's attention is always on that. That's not what the research says is the thing that's pulling everything down. So just want to, you brought it up because you're provocative. You're provocative.
One of the keys is roadblock teachers.
Yes, and it's the one that's most, that's the one. But I just want to make sure that it's clear.
It is one of your 5.
It is one in the 5.
So I wasn't off base.
No, you're not. But I want to balance it out.
I just tried. I think you're argumentative, but that's okay. You protest too much. Look, it seems to me that this city's gone through a roiling political year last couple of years. We've had a mayor most people liked. He wasn't the most connected guy in the world. He was a bit aloof, but he was honest, which is good, and he was respected, which is good. And he had a school superintendent, Michelle Rhee, who was judged to be very tough, demanding, was like a tiger mom, who basically had an attitude about getting rid of the bad teachers. And along comes Randy Weingarten of the American Federation of Teachers and drops $1 million in the coffers of Vincent Gray, and they knocked this person out. A lot of people thought that wasn't a good thing for this city. Your view?
Wow.
Ha!
Okay, so let me go back a bit. So we met Michelle for the book when she was chancellor, and she's a lovely lady and was very forthcoming with all of her beliefs and all that stuff. Here's the reality. You're gonna think I'm dancing around your question, and maybe I am, but it is a lot of the groundbreaking work that has caused the research to happen over the last 10 years has been by those vanguard TFA alumni that have broken the system and done it their own way, whether it's KIPP or, we can go on with the list, right? And they have actually created the tenets. It's that mentality of shattering the room, and I'm going to start over, and I'm going to do it differently and see what works. That's caused us to have the moment that we have here now, where we do have the information from all those people. So that kind of rebellious, rogue kind of mentality has caused change, and it has caused all of the evidence that we have today. So I'm with on that. I don't want to weigh in on the politics of it all. Of did she go too far? Did she handle it in the politically right way to make change? Do you have to make sure everybody understands and all stuff? As I've kind of intimated in the first response to you, the research doesn't say that getting rid of those bottom teachers is the silver bullet. That's not what the research says.
Is it a bullet?
It's part of the.
The politics of this,
yes.
Because for years this town, it's been very hard to get a job in the private sector if you're African American, and so the government, not last resort, often first resort was government jobs for African Americans, and certainly teaching jobs were respected in the community. A teacher, a woman especially, who's been teaching for 20 or 30 years. Was respected in the community, and this was a prized position. In comes this person from outside and says, we're going to get rid of some of you people. Mm-hmm. A lot of people put up the barricades and, whoa, this is one place we had where we could get jobs, and now you're going to put a price on our head.
Right.
And that was a lot of the politics. I know it's a cartoon version, but this is what it was.
Right.
And there was a lot of fight against that from the poor wards, for example. I can tell what happened. And the more elite wards said, sure. But it was one of those class distinction fights that go on in politics all the time. So how do you settle it?
Well, we went through, again, that's the hope of this, is that when we're making legislative decisions, or that a chancellor in a school system is making decisions, that they're looking at what's been proven. They each want to prove new things. That's just the nature of, all of us trying to do our own thing. But there's so much that has been proven, and they have data behind them. In fact, when we met Michelle was very excited about the book, and she's been a big supporter because she wanted to have that ammunition herself, and everybody, by the way, and even that we had the teachers union over for dinner and all, and again, our findings, some of them support the teachers union. It's not, this isn't like teachers unions and ed reform and which side are you on. That's not the case. The research was kind of very non-biased, Michelle was very excited about us doing this, and she's again one of those people that keeps trying to prove new things and some of them don't work and some of them do work and all of that stuff. And I'm of the mind now that I guess I'm answering your question now, that there's enough proven that we have the spine of what's a healthy school system now, and you can still kind of prove if you want the other stuff, and you could try aggressive stuff, but I can give, like, if you ask me questions, I could tell you proven, not proven, proven, not proven now on every topic up to this point, and that will change in 5 years, but this is where we are at this point. And at that, the people that are making decisions, we met with a senator today, and all you want is the evidence. I'm from a family, I'm going to jump for a second, you tell me when you want me to shut up. And I'm from a family of doctors, right? All doctors, and it's an evidence-based field, right? And so they don't guess how to do a heart surgery. They don't go, I think I'm gonna go. That's crazy. That's crazy, right? I mean, that's crazy. So why would you go, this is how you teach, these are the factors that come in, right? And it's not, for some reason this field doesn't share the information, I've met with someone in charge of one of the biggest cities in the country of all the public schools, and they said they're going to start their own charter school to find out what works best. They have the best charter schools, and they won't take that information. He's starting his own, and I was like, oh my God, why is everybody starting from scratch? And they're all getting to the same set. Jeffrey Canada read it, loved it. Everybody, Mike Feinberg, all of it, they read it, loved it, and they're all coming to the same conclusions. There's so much overlap in the best practices category. You don't have to figure out how to do heart surgery. Someone else did that already. So let's do it as an evidence-based field.
Your method's interesting because you start with what I think is a presumption of many people here, not everybody here certainly, which is that public schools are not working. The public school teachers unions are not helping. They're just protecting the teachers, not the students.
I didn't say that.
I said that. I said it's a presumption. The presumption that charter schools are better than regular public schools, traditional public schools. And if you pick out some kids like I try to do with our family, we try to help.
Wait, what was that thing you just said? What was the last thing you said? About something better than public schools? What did you say?
Traditional schools, people think charter schools are better.
Yes, that's not me.
I know. What I'm setting up here is your chance to lance through it and show the real truth.
Got you.
But the presumption is that charter schools are better than traditional schools, that these opportunity scholarships, which I support in this city, which are basically vouchers. We support the Washington Jesuit Academy. We have to get kids in tough neighborhoods whose parents will do what they can, but the rest is helped by other people.
Right.
They get a really good education. So we're basically looking for opportunity kids who really want to work, and we give them some help. Now, it seems to me you don't think these sort of cliche ideas. We can change schools by going from public to charter. We can pick out the best kids and help them. You have a very democratic argument in your book, which is the bottom quintile has to be helped. The gap is frightening. It's not just we take the top 1 or 2 quintiles and boost them along and make them success stories, but the gap is the terror. The frightening thing is in America there will be this gap, and we must not just help the elite and the kids who are going to be A students no matter where they go. We got to get to the kids who have the biggest challenges, coming from poverty families. The other thing I loved in the book was you pointed out that poverty is really an explanation for most of poor performance, and it's not IQ or anything else, it's just poverty. So crash through. This audience is pretty liberal, I think, so I think they're open to liberal in a good sense. They don't have fixed positions. Tell me why what I just laid out is the problem. Randy Weingarten and politics, which basically defends teachers rather than students, and doesn't really understand that you got to help I'll say it, I'm for the elite kids. Because when I meet kids that go to Catholic school, usually African-American, I meet them, they're poised, confident, they're smartly dressed for work, they're going someplace, and I say, you go to Catholic school? And the kid says, yeah. Now, I don't want to go to Catholic school. I've been there. I had it. But I think kids coming from undisciplined backgrounds need that kind of discipline. I just think they do. Here's my prejudice. I'm laying them out. I think people that come from a family where there's disorganization at home, they need some organization at school, more than I'm willing to put up with myself, like nuns, right? So tell me where I'm wrong.
Okay, let's see. Where do we start?
I may be wrong.
No. There's so many things I wanted to say to what you said. Okay, so first of all, we started this thing, right? We went at it because I went to sit down with everybody, Ms. Jill Reese, everybody around the country, anybody on all levels, and just said, what works? and everyone had a different set of things, and everyone was giving opinions. I said, that's great. I want to know what the facts are. And what was really interesting is that no one really had the whole handle on the whole list, and yet these are the top people in the field. And that was fascinating. Why is there an assumption that it hasn't been proven yet? So the first thing that we did was we decided to take all the research efforts and get interns and get researchers and gather all the information. So we said, let's put it all on the table. Let's get all the research from all the subjects. Classroom size, small schools, this, that, the other thing, performance pay, everything you can think of that's been talked about, everything. Try to categorize. It was a mountainous thing. I mean, it's just, hundreds and hundreds of articles and trials and things like that, organized and looking at it. And we got it all together, 2 years of it, and it's a mess. It's just a mess. It's a pile that does no form. And it's like, if you have one thing here, it says it does work, this one says it doesn't work, right? And you're going, oh my God, what are we looking at? So I'm feeling like they're feeling, right? I'll just make my opinions. I'm going to go intuitively through this and just gut it. I know what works. I'm going to go do something. I know what works for my kids, so I'm going to implement that. That's not where you want to be. Again, so kind of step back and you go, we were at a moment where that would have been the impasse. And then in the book, I talk about this moment. I call it the House moment, from the TV show House, where he figures out how to solve the thing by bowling, and he goes, the bacteria. And it's like that moment. We were at dinner and with our friends who are brilliant doctors, and one of them teaches the residents at Penn. And what he says when they first come in, these hot shots from all over the country, they come in and he goes, I need you to know something. We weren't talking about education, by the way, just talking about how he teaches and how he works. And he said, I need you guys to know something. You got to tell your patients this. If they do these 5 things, sleep 8 hours a day, exercise 3 times a week, have a balanced diet, don't smoke, and be cognizant of your mental health, that your work environment is like, the stress level of your mental health, that you're cognizant of those things. If you do these 5 things, your chances of getting all diseases drops to such an incredible level. It beats every pill, every treatment ever created if you do these 5 things. The resident said, we don't believe it. He goes, here's all the data. Data. They go, and then he goes, but this is the thing you got to remember. If you don't do one of them, your chances go back to the norm, right? So, and that's where it went click. And I went, oh my God, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for a set of things, because it's a system. The body's a system. It wants to be healthy. Every school district, inner city school district in the United States is working the same way. You go to Philly, Detroit, Washington, it's all virtually the same way. It's working as a system. So how does the system work? And in that, then we went and spent the next 2 years looking at the data and going, are there sets of things that you see, oh wow, when this trial was done and it got a positive result, it was done with this, right? And you start linking them and you go, is there a set of things that emerges? And when you looked at it under that health paradigm, which is probably not a health paradigm, it's probably a system paradigm, you saw it. And it started to emerge, and we started to go, wow, that pile with that pile, and that pile with that pile, that works. Wow, small schools works when you do this. When you do this, when you do this. If you did one of them, you're gonna get a lot of false positives. You're gonna get a lot of people dying on the treadmills from heart attacks and go, exercise sucks, right? Right? You're gonna get that, right? And or I don't smoke, that means I'm healthy. No, right? That all sounds silly. So those kind of equivalents. And so we found all these tenets that came to the surface as, wow, when we do this together, the research says this should close the gap. So then what we went and did was we went around the country and looked at the schools that had closed the gap. All the schools all around the country, and went and visited them. Every single one of them were doing these 5 tenets. So it's like you check the back answer book and you looked in the back, did I get it right? And the research was dead on. And what happens, what you find out is the Jeffrey Canadas and whoever we're talking about figured it out themselves because they're unbelievable, right? They just burned through it and figured it out themselves. Oh, we need to do this, we need to do that, we need to do this. And what we're talking about doing is those 5 things that we're talking about, when you reach the research supports, if you do these 5 things, it allows all this whole system to work. The teachers that, and this is the thing, the teachers that are at the kind of towards the bottom will still be able to succeed if all of these things are in place. That's what it's there for. It's so that not just the top 20% succeed, but everybody succeeds. And so that was why it was so, when he's referring to being optimistic, that was what was so exciting. I was looking at it and assuming there was an answer. That's, I guess, the first thing, that there was an answer there, and there was.
One of the things of the 5 that impressed me was leadership, and it's not just in the classroom but in the school. Talk about leadership, how the principal walking down the hall or stopping in the classes
Right.
somehow makes a school is a key, one of your 5 keys.
So the research supports that a principal in the schools that are closing the gap, a principal is spending about 80% of their time teaching teachers. They're not doing management stuff. They're not fundraising. They're not doing all that. Management has been pushed to another branch that other people are taking care of. So this sounds kind of natural and intuitive, right? If we were basketball players, 5 basketball players, I wouldn't want the coach in the back room trying to get people in the seats. He needs to teach us. He needs to coach us. And so what you find is that they're going in and out of the classrooms, always evaluating, always observing, always saying, hey, call on Sarah in the back. You know, you got to keep your voice up on over here when you do this. When you got to this subject, you got kind of convoluted. You might want to go look at that yourself at night before you come in because you didn't seem clear on all those content. And the schools that are closing up, their doors are open. The principals are coming in and out all the time. It's just natural. The coach is going to say, do this, do this, do this. It isn't pejorative in any sense at all. And one of the things, like we were talking about the 2 things done together, the idea, right? So, like, for example, small schools would be let's just say, the equivalent of not smoking, let's say. So you remember the Gates Foundation was behind this and then kind of stopping before it? And because not smoking doesn't mean you're healthy. So it was, but a smaller school allows a principal to do this, right? If there was 400 classrooms they need to do this, they couldn't possibly do what I'm saying. One person couldn't possibly get to all the teachers and do this kind of intense, coaching and showing the data and giving best practices and that gives you get this feeling of being a part of a system. You're going, hey, Mrs. Hoffer over here used this book and did this. You want to try it? You want to try that? Yes, and you just feel, and you win. Best practices just starts coming to the forefront and you feel supported. If I was this player, by the time the coach had me for 2 years, I was this player, right? You learned all the basics. You learned how to do it properly. So that's with regard to the player. And the other thing the leaders that we found they did that, and they did one thing that's critically important. They created an extremely strong culture in these schools, extremely strong. It doesn't even matter the specifics of the culture. Like KIPP has 5 this, and, Achievement First has this, and, Uncommon Schools has their own version of the things on the wall. They're not exactly the same, but they're all positive, right? They're all empowering. It doesn't matter necessarily what the specifics are. It needs to be loud, and everybody, the secretary, everybody, the janitor, everybody's in on it. And everybody's screaming to these kids because they're trying to scream louder than the one we talked about that they're getting whispered when they walked out of their school, which is, you don't matter. You don't matter. This country doesn't even like you. That's what they're being told. They can see it and being told from their family members, from their friends, from the neighbors, from the media, from everything. So they're screaming a different message. And I was, the head of the Uncommon Schools told me, culture eats strategy for lunch. And he was just, that you just create this thing. As soon as they come in, when you go, like there's this school in Newark, it's just, by the way, you guys should check the school out. It's called North Star Academy. You come in and it's like a frickin' pep rally in the morning. Right before they come in, they're like, yeah. Teachers come in, they got their alma maters, the Cornells and all that stuff. They come running into the classrooms, they come running into the cafeterias, and the kids get pumped. And the kids are doing the cheers from the teachers' alma maters, so they're doing the Penn song or the Cornell song. And it's just, whatever message they were getting, it's getting eradicated in 30 seconds, when they walk in there. And these kids, those kids are like crushing academically and like creating a gap the other way. You can see in a continuum when we're talking about this cultural thing. When you look at schools, like school systems that are closing the gap, and so like you put them on a continuum, you can see, like, I'll just pick one on this side, which would be First Line Schools in New Orleans, and the Uncommon Schools, which we're talking about over here. They're more and more prescriptive as you go to this. Prescriptive in terms of how you teach, how you speak, what you teach. In the Uncommon Schools, there's a line in the hallways from classroom to classroom, and the kids walk in a line like a military school to get there. Do you find this offensive? You shouldn't, because they're saying every second in here counts. Everything in here is important. The way you walk, the way you speak, everything. And by the way, they're uber consistent in these schools. So the really prescriptive schools are super consistent. So they know in 3rd grade they're getting judged the exact same way in 5th grade. They don't have to learn a new code every single class from a different teacher. They've mastered it. They're empowered because they know exactly what's going to be expected of them. So they're, there's a wonderful school in Brooklyn where we went Achievement First, where when the kids like something that a student said, like if they gave a correct answer, the kids shine them. They go like this. And the whole school does this. you know, and it's so like empowering. It's their code, it's their speak, it's their culture, and there's no, whatever they're getting told outside, they just got shined by 50 kids. That does, you know, you can't tell me I'm worthless. 50 kids just shine me 10 times today, you know, and it's just they're like, I'm not believing this thing you're telling me when I walk outside this school. And so it's the culture. So that's what that kind of like the leader tenet. When you look at one of the tenets, that's kind of the leader tenet about how much time they spend and the culture that they create.
You know, one thing you talk about, just to let everybody know, there's a very objective notion, a hard notion you have of what teaching's supposed to be. It's about growth, how you measure it. You talk about in the book about how you can tell how good a teacher is because there's growth. You take a kid in September, what's that kid like in June, right? And so when you talk about these school systems that can be perfected with these 5 keys, is it measurable? I mean, it's not like Summerhill or some school where everybody does what they feel like doing. You have a very clear, almost a notion of people coming to this country. They can't afford to just take, you know, let's have fun and have a lot of BS going on in school. There's definitely things kids have to learn to be what you want them to be, right? It's pretty hard.
Yeah,
this curriculum you talk about.
Yeah, I think your kind of passion for the Jesuits and the Catholic school things is a version of this culture conversation that you know.
We used to recite. The nuns would have us recite like the partridge in the pear tree. We would add to it every day coming back from lunchtime to the point where we were like reciting for like an hour. We recited every lesson we had that semester up till then, reciting it again. Every, you know, mother, was it memory's the mother of memory or mother's the memory of education? We constantly thought if you just parroted it back over and over and over again, that's the way the nuns taught, you know?
No, by the
they
way,
hit you with a ruler too if you,
by the way,
didn't learn it.
There's 2 things that why this was surprising to me. One, because I'm an artist. I definitely thought coming in, you know, let the people, you know, let everybody be themselves, and there'll be incredible things that'll happen. Let everybody figure it out for themselves. Like, get the brilliant guys and the brilliant women in there, and let them be the amazing teachers and principals, and let them figure it all out. That's where I came from when we started. That was an absolute truth. My bias was there. I'm like, we're gonna find that. So let's just find it in the research that's the case. And I had my biases too. And also, I went to Catholic school for 10 years, so I was like, that can't be the way. So I was biased. But it actually, as I said to you, the research, it was more and more prescriptive. And then I said to myself, when I was doing the research before visiting, would I want to? Let's say I was a top level teacher, right? Say I was, I'm at the top level teacher. Would I want to be a part of the system that's so prescriptive, right? Oh, I'm an artist. I don't want anybody telling me how to make movies, right? Nobody should tell me how to make a movie, right? But so this seems offensive, but what you find is that you would think that the what we'll call like the Superman or the really capable teachers wouldn't want to be a part of that system, but it's actually not the case at all. In fact, I'll tell you, there's the number one thing teachers want is a sense of satisfaction, a sense of being heard, a sense of being. It isn't money. It isn't you. They are what you would guess, the most selfless people in our community, and it isn't those things that we kind of put on them. It's not. They want to succeed with these kids, and when you're a part of a system that succeeds, and 98% of the kids are going to college. I mean, why are you? You're gonna feel good. You're gonna feel good, and if you're that Superman, you're probably creating a lot of the best practices that your peers are now emulating. It's going into a system. It's being heard. The principal is hearing it and disseminating it. Look what Joe Schmo did with his second grade class, and it's you feel heard and you feel valued. So you do feel like you can be the best version of yourself and play team ball. And so that was really, really surprising.
What did you think of Waiting for Superman, the David Stuyvesant documentary?
Well, I cried, definitely. I mean, like everybody else.
The 2 points in it, are they true? One is there's a lot of people in New York City, a lot of them African-American women, working class people, who waited in line, have killed themselves to get in line for these scholarships or these vouchers. And the other was this nodding room, or whatever you call it, where these teachers, or the lousy teachers, would sit there day after day just to record the fact they showed up. They didn't have to teach. They just sat in these rooms, just sitting there like they're being warehoused. Is that all true?
Yes, but again, when you just say those things, that's not my reflection of the 4 years of seeing the research. I don't go, yeah, man. Hey, man, yeah. That's not. I don't get that vibe to go.
You don't get the reaction that documentary was.
Well, I don't. Well, again, it was beautifully done and truthful and all, but it was kind of leaning towards certain things. You know, we didn't find the evidence for voucher systems. It's just not there. So that's not there. So.
What about the kids who are on vouchers? Do they benefit personally?
that evidence of like that we believe that America was built on competition and all that stuff and all, it's just not there yet. It's just not. Maybe it would be there. I'm just telling you what's there. Don't get angry. It's not there. It's just not there. So that's why it's not in the tenets. And I wanted to address again this whole thing that we gotta get those teachers. We gotta go get those teachers. I don't have that feeling from the research, from looking at the research. That's not what it says. And in fact, what I'm saying to you is everything, all these things are spokes on a wheel to help the teachers, to help support the teacher in the classroom. We need a system that 97, 98% of the teachers in this whole country can succeed. That's what we should be looking to do, right? And so finding ways to support them and convincing them that we're supporting them, that they don't have to do it themselves. So for example, their feeling about doing themselves is, let's make this classroom smaller. That I know I can do better if you do that, so just give me that. That's their feeling. There isn't the clear evidence for that, but we do have evidence for these other things that can help you. Again, so if you extended the school year or something, for example, we can show with the research that when you get your student, they will be at a place that you can actually continue to teach them rather than going back. I'm going to deviate for 1 second on that one subject. We support a guy in Philadelphia named Alejandro Gac Artigas, and he runs a thing called Springboard Collaborative. So he's a brilliant Harvard kid that concentrated on the summer slide, the one we just talked about. So this guy, by the way, he may change the whole country. So I want you to make sure that you know that we said it first here. But he's an incredible individual. So what he's done, he has a 5-week program in the summer with the kids, and he teaches them reading with their parents, and he keeps them in there for 5 weeks. The first group that he did had, well, you know what? Let's skip the first group. The group now, he has 800 kids in Philly, right? All from the worst schools and the lowest populate, all that stuff. He goes to the door and gets them to come and come. And he has 98% parent involvement. Those kids gained 3 months of reading. Now, you heard that right. Gained. So they are 2 months ahead of their white suburban peers. So they're creating a gap the other way. So, and as you can do the math, they're 6 months ahead of their unfortunate peers that didn't go to this. So they're half a grade ahead. And he's had incredible results. And he actually has proven that the 2/3 of the education gap, 2/3 of what we're talking about, is created from this summer slide as you multiply, the multiplying factor. So if I gave, you just did that. The teachers that are coming, I mean, you're releasing their burden so much. So many more teachers are going to succeed. So many more teachers are going to be able to do the things they need to do, that you're not going to have this kind of division. So the hope is to support the teachers and show them what the research says. This will help you. This will really help you, and they can feel not so like protective of only their own thing, because they've been alone for quite a bit.
Well, I love this thing about your movies. I told him, you said, the unifying theory of the sixth sense was communication. I love learning that because I just saw it again. It's one of my top movies of my lifetime. Let me just tell you something in terms of this book, having read it. The great thing about this book is not the bottom lines that you've just enunciated. It's the odyssey and the narrative of how he discovered this. And how he went to real schools, like tough schools like Overbrook in Philly, where all our sports heroes came from. Chamberlain and Wally Jones and Wayne Hightower, they all came out of there. And the great ball players that came out of Philly came out of Overbrook, which you describe in pretty scary terms, how it's become what it is. And Masterman, a great school. And Olney, which I grew up knowing about, and talking about what that was like. And these are tough schools. And the fact that you went into them, it's probably must have been a little bit uncomfortable. And going there and really learning it, and your story of your education in this is such a great reason to write this book. So whatever you hear here is just sort of cursory. It's just the bottom line. This book must be bought to be fully appreciated, not just come here. Anyway, yes, it's true. Anyway, now that you communicate, I'm going to turn it over for 20 minutes of questions, and all you have to do is raise your hand, and I'll recognize you quickly, and I'll stay out of it. Yeah, I'm sorry. There's a rule here. That's the mic. Come on up, miss. You'll be first, and then we'll do everybody who gets in line. So get in line now, and we'll have the first cut. Thank you all for coming in. And you're going to stick around and sign books, right?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, great. I really think you should. This isn't a killer-sized book, by the way. Yes.
Hi, I have 2 questions. Number 1, do you believe that we should teach to the test? And number 2, do you think there should be a national curriculum?
The best practices thing would tend, again, now we're getting into my opinion, which you can throw out.
Well, or what does your research show?
Yeah, well, the research, again, there is no research on that, what you just said, but it would indicate that best practices, prescribing best practices is a way to alleviate the burden for the individual teachers on a whole, if you want the whole system to succeed. I'll tell you, for example, like I would go to school systems that were closing the gap, and they were doing it, some of them were not doing it prescriptively, they were doing it by that Superman theory. And so I'd ask the teachers, it was funny because I'd ask the teachers this. I'd sit with them, and this is a school that's closing the gap, and I'd say, so how's your social life? And they'd look at me, no, I'm serious, how's your social life? And they're just staring at me, and I'm like, so like, we don't have one. And I'm like, are you going on a date? Are you going on, what's happening? And they're giggling, and I'm like, no, I'm asking for real. And they're like, no, we don't. And I'm like, how often do you work? And it's around the clock, all weekend, everything. And I go, can you see yourself doing this in 6 years, 10 years? And they shake their head like, it's awful. And they just shake their head no. And that's what we're trying to get around. There are Supermen and Superwomen out there for sure, but we don't want to have a system that relies on that. And the ones that are more prescriptive, I swear I would ask them the same question. And I go, how's your social life? They're like, yeah, I went to this freaking concert last night. It sucked. And, they'd give a normal reaction. And I go, and how about you? Oh, you're engaged. Can you do this 10 years from now? Yeah, I think so. There's more hope, because the burden was there. So I don't know if I'm being elliptical in answering your question, but best practices is a way to alleviate the system so that everybody doesn't have to invent how to do heart surgery by themselves. It's too much of a burden. So if we can get to a very advanced version of, hey, this is a curriculum that everybody should follow, we're getting there. I mean, there's a reason that when you look at the charter schools, they are not, on a whole, are not better than the traditional public schools, is because the traditional public schools are a little bit more prescriptive, so they have a little bit more evenness, and the charter schools are like this, right? Awful and amazing, right? But the average is the same. And so the theory is if you can raise the prescription theoretically, so then that's complete opinion. So I'm extrapolating from what we found of the individual school systems.
I think you answered my question.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, I'm so long.
No, thank you.
Hi. I taught for 10 years in Boston in a progressive school, public school. And so that's kind of a disclaimer. And then I just finished my PhD at Penn. And I actually studied school culture, and I looked at the school I worked in, a very progressive school started by Deborah Meyer. Do you know her?
Oh, yeah.
And the original KIPP school.
Ah.
And it was really interesting because, culture, they're totally different cultures, but what rose to the top sort of was this interest by the principals and the staff in continual improvement. Mm-hmm. And they found ways to do that. Mm-hmm. But they're both working within the system that's, very sort of punitive accountability, especially my school, because it's not as highly regarded as the KIPP school, right? So that's one.
Say that again.
So
it was more punitive because of that?
Well, I feel like KIPP focuses on test scores. Uh-huh. And so that they were doing great with tests. I'll just tell you really quickly the reason why I was interested in the original KIPP school in Houston is because the principal there did his own research, and he found that the kids who graduated from middle school went on to these elite, really good high schools because of their test scores. And when they got there, they sort of fell down a little bit socially and in writing. That was the main thing. Yeah. And what he sort of surmised from that is that writing is about thinking. Mm-hmm. And so he started making changes because of all this real prescriptive stuff.
Yes.
So that's my question to you.
Yes.
Because
is there another
well, the
element
first thing that you said, I think, one of the first things you talked about was how you told kids it's about being yourself. Yes. It's about letting yourself shine through. And these schools that you talked about, and I haven't read your book, so I don't know if you talk about other ones, but the Achievement First, the KIPPs, the chanting, all of that is about kids taking on this other persona, sort of, and it is like a pep rally. Mm-hmm. But when they leave, what happens? Mm-hmm. When they don't have those structures, what happens? And are they able to develop themselves so that when they're out there in the world, they can navigate the way the kids who go to these really elite, like the Deerfields and the, I don't know, what the public equivalent of that is. But so that's my question to you. And I just want to say really quick that I'm surprised because I wanted to not like you. Being a teacher, I'm like, who's this guy? Like Davis Guggenheim, who I just have to say, I'm surprised you like his movie because the two main points that movie makes is that, three. Teacher unions are the problem.
Right.
We should fire the bottom 10% of teachers. Charter schools are the answer. And you've debunked all of those, so I thank you for doing that.
Right.
I do like you.
It
Thanks.
was well made. She doesn't want an answer. She ran away. It's a fascinating thing. There was I think part of the culture that succeeds, I think, is that culture that's doing a little bit of what I was saying about, it's you, that you're worthy, you're powerful, that we hear you, that they're very intense, and so part of the I believe part of the culture that those principals are doing in some of those schools that succeed is that. Now, what the book is about is closing the achievement gap. Does that solve all our woes? I don't know. But can we close the achievement gap? Yes. Okay? So, yes, so you can say, oh, is it test scores? Like my daughter says, my daughters go to this, our daughters go to this amazing school. Why am I doing this, calculus problem? And I'm like, I say the same thing. You're learning how to learn. That's what you're doing here. That's what you're doing. You're building your muscles. Why do I lift a weight over my head? Is for what? Right? We're building muscles so I can do what I want to do with my body. That's what you're doing. You're learning how to learn. You're challenging yourself. You're knowing that you didn't understand that. You figured it out, and you don't ever have that feeling, And I can't believe. I know it's limited, to use test scores, as our this is the most important thing, the test scores. But succeeding at anything, is a powerful thing to learn for yourself. It's not the end of the game. They're going to get to college. All these kids are going to get to college, and they're going to face difficulties. That message that was told to them is still in their heads. It's still there. There's going to be a struggle, but it's a dramatic movement in the right direction. An educated generation, an educated generation is a good thing. Is it the only thing we need? I don't know. Probably not. But it's definitely a good thing.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi. I'd like to ask the question of the impact that television, educational television, such as it exists in the United States, what impact does it have on those kids that are trying to move out of poverty? And the second question is really actually let me answer the first question, and then I'll mention the second.
I'm going to just give the question correctly. You're saying educational TV?
Yes.
With regard to closing the achievement gap?
Yes.
I didn't find any evidence of that, but I will look into it to see if there is. But I'm sorry, I didn't have any information.
Right.
Do you,
and actually, the second question is, you mentioned that when the kids go for breaks, they come back 3 or 4 months later. There's a difference. What is that? What is happening in this period?
So what's happening is a lack of experiences, a lack of stimulation. So it isn't they're getting the white suburban kids are getting tutored. That's not what's happening. They are, but they're getting tutored by their families, by their people that they're around. That they're hearing, like my kids will hear me going on and on about something that I read or something that I believe or something, oh, he said this on Hardball. I can't believe he said that. And they're getting, they're getting this stimulation of thought, and they're getting a classroom, right? And there's all these stats on the extremely low income families say like 2 million less words per year. Then it's a different atmosphere. On top of the whole, hey, let's go visit the Grand Canyon. On top of all that stuff, where they get to have different experiences. That huge difference in stimuli, that huge difference in learning, the provocative nature of the environment is gigantic. It's 2/3 of the reason that the gap exists. So
should government be involved in trying to close that gap?
Well, not again. The book says we're going to assume that that's not going to change, right? The home environment, right? We're going to change the home environment by educating this generation for one generation, and then their homes will be very different, right? So that's the premise. If help comes from the other way, fantastic. But this is the thing. Is it possible to close the gap? if just with the schools and the teachers, yes, they have to spend more time. By the way, one of them is more time, early childhood. Every which way you can get more time in the school helps. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your talk. I'll get your book.
Thank you.
So, if we acknowledge the importance of culture, which I do, and I wonder whether you agree that it's easier to start a new culture than it is to rip one out and change from within.
Wow,
If you agree with that, then I wonder what you think about trying to change the significant installed base of troubled schools as opposed to restart them, as opposed to starting anew.
Wow, that's a very topical and important question. We did not find the research that supports, crush a school, start over again from scratch. I'm gonna give you my opinion, right? It's harder. When you're renovating a house, you've heard this story, right? It's harder to renovate a house, right? A lot of people go, they raise the house and built. We can do it ourselves, but you can't. There's so much beauty in the original house that you can maintain. There's not, we renovated our house, even though I know that it would have been easier to raise it, right? We renovated it because now we got the beauty of the new thoughts and the old thoughts that are there. And so it's harder, but that's the one I would want for everybody, is the renovation rather than the raising. That's an opinion, though.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's amazing.
Hi. You talked a lot about comparing suburban schools to schools in inner cities and poor communities, and I was wondering if you looked at schools that are in rural areas and poor communities, and if there's a similar achievement gap, and if the techniques that you've looked at are applicable there as well.
There are different issues in those schools, because again, I believe, this is an opinion part, but what we're talking about is a racist thing, racism alive and well and thriving, Forgive me if I just said this, or I had two interviews today, so forgive me if I'm repeating myself. You can just yell, "Shut up." If you took, did I tell you this? The PISA thing, the PISA,
I want to hear this.
That international study that compares us to all the countries, and Finland's number one and all this stuff. So if you take out the schools of high poverty out of the equation and you keep all the rest of the schools, every single one of them, just take out those inner city schools, the low income inner city schools, and you keep every one of the high schools all the schools in the United States, we're number one in the world. By a lot. Mm-hmm. We crush Finland. So we're doing a good job teaching the kids that ironically are white. So we're doing a good job. Again, it's a racist country. What are you going to do? That's what we're talking about. So that the thing you're talking about, there's another book to be written about how to make our traditional schools better. And that'll be a whole set of other things. How do you make them better? Because by the way, the getting them to the white suburban schools that isn't our goal. That's just start baseline. Then when we get there, let's make everything great. So there's a whole bunch of stuff with regard to how to make those rural schools, but that wasn't the research that we were looking at. That they weren't looking at any of that stuff. It was really related to inner city inequalities with these communities.
Thank you.
Hi.
I'm wondering, in the 250 schools that are closing the achievement gap, if you identified any strategies that they were using in terms of engaging families that then really helped make the families part of the team that was educating the child, if anything stood out to you?
So this is my thing. There's going to be a sixth tenet, and it will be engaging the families and the community. It will be that. There just isn't the research for me to put it in the book. It just hasn't been, they didn't do a control group saying this school over here, took 5 classes and in the 5th grade went to the parents and did this, and we got this jump. This kind of effect size happened. That hasn't been done yet. Those research and all that stuff. I know from anecdotal information from the principals, the teachers, and things like that, that this will be the case, that the sixth tenet will be this. What will that mean? Again, it will be another turbocharging factor to raising. This is what our friend Alejandro does, right? So Alejandro in Finland, he uses the families and he makes them teachers. He teaches them how to teach the kids. So they're talking about the tense of verbs and this and that and this and that, and they're engaging together in the same vocabulary, and he's getting incredibly high results because of it. And now he's going to be looking into how to, the parents have asked to continue that program during the school year, so he's doing a pilot program to do it, extending the day with the parents and doing it, and I bet you he's going to have sick results because of it. You're going to have, right now with these tenants, it's hard work to close the gap with these 5 tenants. It's hard, and I believe, this is an opinion, that it's because of this, because they're not involving, those schools aren't fully taking charge of this one other aspect, which Alejandro is. But one day that will be proven in the 6th tenant, and it'll be, the 6 will make it that much easier to close the gap. I 100% believe that.
Give you a little information that'll verify that as well.
Good,
So,
give it to me.
yeah.
You got to write the next book.
Hi.
Hi.
I taught in a low-income school, and I do agree it's an economic segregation now. A lot of my kids were falling asleep in class. They had single parents that were going to go to jail. They weren't going to have a home. They didn't have meals. I mean, things that I couldn't deal with to go to work every day.
Right.
And one of the solutions I thought of, and I don't know if your research had this, boarding schools, pulling kids out of that environment and putting them into boarding schools. Has this been done?
You know what? That's a way to solve this environmental message issue that we talked about. I'm sure it would work. That sounds like a costly answer for the entire system to do, right? The entire system. So we're looking at kind of scalable research that's possible to say, if everyone did these things, you're going to get net gains. You're going to get net gains. Yeah, it is fascinating because most of the schools that we looked at and they're closing up have 85 to 90% of free lunch, free everything. So the kids come in, they give them breakfast first, and then give them quizzes while they're eating their breakfast. That's before the school starts. Yeah.
So no boarding. You didn't see any schools that tried that though.
We didn't. Did we see any? There are some, right? But it wasn't. But again, as a prescriptive solution for the country, it would be very difficult.
Oh well, I was just wondering if it actually worked though.
I think it does.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have the last question now, sir, and then we'll do signs.
Would you elaborate a bit on the topic of grit, of perseverance, and there's been considerable coverage of it in the media lately and in academic journals, and some indications that it can be taught. How well does that work? Do you recommend it?
Again, I'm going to be real clear. So that there wasn't the research yet for me to put it as a prescriptive thing, but I do believe that is a big thing in the cultures that are closing the gap. I think have that inherently in it. In fact, we met a guy from a kid. Where is he from? Harvard? Was he from Yale? The Future Project guy. Do you guys know that Future Project? He believes in that there's a piece missing in terms of the faculty at these schools, which is the kind of the character person, like they call him the dream leader in the schools, and they're addressing this subject of building the person to handle all those things because they've been torn down so much outside. So there's a lot of research coming, and he has a lot of research, and there's a lot of people that have been coming to me about this subject, about the grit and all. Again, maybe that's the 7th tenet. Be excited. Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you all. We want to
Thanks
get
a
the
lot, guys.
signing
Thank
going
you.
right now. Thank you.